Iowa's News Now Sports brings you Black and Gold Glory, your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
And the Cy-Hawk Trophy makes its way back to Iowa City. Hey, everybody, welcome to our second live edition of Eye on the Hawks, and I've got the volume on my computer. What an incredible start. Everything's live. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Mitch Fick now on mute. Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here. 20-13. Copy and paste from last week in a lot of different ways for Iowa. Score early, protect that lead to the bitter end as the Iowa State rivalry swings back the way of the Hawkeyes after Iowa State's win in Kinnick in 2022. Owen, you were there with Curtis Fader covering everything. Your initial impressions of the Hawkeye win to go to 2-0.
Yeah, I like the setup for today's show, being able to analyze this from our different angles, because I was there with Curtis. You guys were watching on TV. Just in general, I feel like watching sports, you get a different impression from hearing the broadcasters, hearing the announcers, seeing things from your perspective versus the one there on the field. So look forward to this conversation today and what we both have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
But initially, it's seemed very similar to the Utah State game last week in terms of first two drives, come out there, put some good things together, score some points early, and just kind of protect the lead late, as Utah State did. Iowa State gets a touchdown late in the fourth quarter to make it a little bit more interesting, but Iowa just protects that lead. One initial impression, just getting more people involved in the offense. I mean, we saw a few more pass catchers yesterday, and Deontay Vines getting a catch. Hayden Large got a catch in that game, to the delight of many. So yeah, just getting a little creative out there, and I think that was nice to see for a lot of people. A few of us were saying on the sideline, it was nice to see them at least take some different looks, get some different people involved, and spread things out a little more.
I don't think anybody would paint Iowa as having a wealth of riches on offense so far. Obviously some sparks, but spreading the wealth where they can and how they can, certainly a great thing to see. Mike, your impressions as well watching on TV like I did.
Yeah, I liked how Owen said, and it definitely rings true. When you're on the sideline, some things are harder to see, especially on the Iowa sideline when there's not a lot of room, as opposed to watching a broadcast. You can see kind of more of the defense and whatnot. But, yeah, I'll echo what Owen said. Jump out to an early lead. I don't think they sat on the lead. They tried to make some moves late, some deep passes and stuff like that. They just didn't execute. That's, the word they say after all the press conferences. But, things got a little dicey there. Iowa State could have tied it in the last quarter, but the defense did hold. So a lot of things to improve on the offense-wise. I think the defense played great, letting them get some yardage and not breaking over the top. But, yeah.
Yeah, the offense, again, flashing early, that big 59-yard run for Jaz Patterson. This may be framed as the Jaz Patterson game, a nice debut for him. We saw those flashes against Kentucky in the bowl game. Really had a big play there, and then, of course, scoring in the lone offensive touchdown for the Hawkeyes in that drive as well. Just a great start overall for the Hawks, but again, didn't do a whole lot, at least in terms of points. The rest of the way, the flashes, still not maybe all the way there. Connor Colby on the offensive line and Caden McNamara talking about the continued progress of the offense during the postgame.
We still got a lot of growth, I mean, every day we go out to practice trying to improve on what we have to do, what we have to do for this team, and we're just slowly building on that every week, every day, just trying to be the best we can be.
Progressing. I think, some of our scheme is definitely different, from what we've run in years past, but I think really from that standpoint, I think we're getting better. I think we're closing the gap. We're able to see, some things that came out today was stuff that, that kind of caught us by surprise, and that's going to come along at times. And we're still early, but I think we're able to see the level that we're able to play at in pressure situations on third down, and when they're bringing cover zero. That's two teams in a row that tried bringing cover zero on us, and we responded really well. So I think we're still progressing, and I think that's just our mindset, and we're just going to continue to get better. We definitely still have a lot of room to improve. I know that we had some miscues today that some of us want back. I know I should have, I got to go buy Deontay Vines dinner because I missed him on that go route. But, there are some things we still got to get better at. But I think just overall, just us continuing to grow together and really just how passionate they are about getting better is, I think it's shown on the field.
one positive to be taken away, especially from this, is the fact that this made the rounds on Twitter a little bit, that after the game, Matt Campbell said that this was the best he thinks his cycling team has played against the Hawkeyes in the history of their, not in the history of the road, but in the time that he's been the coach there. Yeah.
I wouldn't argue that at all. They looked really good.
Yeah.
Rocco Becht is the guy there.
Sure.
It was very impressive. Yeah.
Just the fact that, like, Iowa was still able to take ISU's best shot under Matt Campbell and still able to weather it and get a 20-13 win, I think is a major positive against a team like Iowa State that's going to have one of the best defenses, especially in the Big 12 this year.
I think Cade pointing out that they're still progressing. Let's remember Cade missed 2 weeks of camp, so really these first 2 weeks of the season are him maybe making up for those missed 2 weeks of camp. So right now going into Western Michigan is probably where people were expecting, I'm sure he was expecting too, of where he'd be having everything under his belt going into the beginning of the year. Instead, he'll do it 2 weeks late. The flashes have certainly been there. Again, he talked about missing the go to Deontay. There was that one to Seth that would have been a 91-yarder that, boy, was just a little long. And you could even see Brian Ferentz and them kind of chuckling a bit on the side. Like they knew. They know they're close there. Had the big gainer to Lachey as well. There was maybe a little bit of an underthrow to Nico on the pick. If you were talking about, there was a little hands and whatnot in there. The officials seemed to call the coverage pretty evenly both ways. There was the talk about Deshaun Lee on one on the opening drive that, there was a bit of an arm bar by the receiver, but people were wondering. They called it pretty fairly there. Yeah. You heard from Connor Colby too. Iowa's pass protection is friggin' fantastic. I mean, you could have put a sleep number bed back there for Cade sometime. I mean, he just had that halo around him. He was great. Jazz Patterson, that big block he had where he's diving to the side to block two dudes. He was great. Run blocking again, sprung a nice big 59-yard run there. A couple more windows of daylight there. But boy, that pass protection. If you're talking about this,
like night and day.
That
The
pass protection
and the fact that Cade. I mean, I don't want to take a shot at Spencer, but you have full confidence that Cade can make a throw when you didn't last year, and that's when I think when Cade says, they played cover zero. That's basically no safeties over the top. A lot of teams did that against Iowa last year, and Iowa couldn't beat them. Mm-hmm. And now, Cade can, so that's going to have defenses down the line adjust.
Just as a shooter, I was made aware of that by the fact that, they do a play action fake and take the handoff, and then Cade would drop back, and he had so much time in the pocket sometimes that I was like, did I miss a handoff? Is the ball somewhere else? Yeah, there's too much time has elapsed, surely, that he can't still have the ball, but surely he still did have the ball and was looking for a pass.
There were a few instances he needed to move his feet, and he moved. I mean, for a guy who we keep talking about, he's banged up, moved decently well, but yeah, there were times that you almost wonder, like, did the camera just not move? Because he's just standing there flat. I mean, he's on his toes, but he could be flat-footed if he wanted. He was great. A guy who kept his feet moving quite a bit. Jazz Patterson, again, we'll go back to him. A huge game, that 59-yard run, the biggest play of the year so far for Iowa. No explosive plays for Iowa against ISU last year. They had one their third play of the game. On a third and short, boy, they had a lot of success on third and short. We'll talk about that a little more going ahead. But here's Jazz the man having his breakout game and how he felt about everything against Iowa State.
But when I got in, I just took advantage of my opportunity. So that's really what it was. I mean, my emotions running wild. I didn't think, like, I was going to do this, but I did. I mean, I prepared for it. So it's like, it's just crazy to see it happen. I just kept my head down every day and I just worked because I knew, like, my time would come. And, like, when it comes, I'm going to show up. And I just work every day. Like, it don't matter. Like, I know anything can happen at any time. Any running back could get injured. So I just think about it like that.
All right, we had people in the chat asking about this block, so we're going to look at Jazz. Goes horizontal. And I think he said in the post game there, Owen, that he knowingly contorted. But that's huge, again. And you see even Cade with a little bit of footwork there to step back a bit. And it's
a minor thing from Cade, but it
makes
a huge difference. And I think that's a sack last year, and it's a first down this year. So
yeah, they even asked Jet, like, it's almost like the writers thought that was like an accident. Like he went for one block and just kind of accidentally took out.
These running backs know exactly what they're doing when it comes to that.
No, that was intentional. I saw them both coming.
And again, that's the difference between a big gainer there and a sack. It changes everything. So a huge play again.
It's little things like that on the Iowa offense that make a difference. I know I was texting with some friends, and I'm kind of torn on whether to be encouraged or be like, I'm expecting more from the offense, but little things. Iowa's offense isn't going to go out there and hang a 70 burger. Just it's not going to happen. But these are really good improvements, things you see that makes you think by the end of the year, hopefully the offense is where Hawkeye fans want it to be.
Yeah, as far as encourage versus discourage, I don't know if this will be something we get to more ahead, but I would say I definitely took a little bit more encouragement, compared to the Utah State game after what I saw yesterday.
I did put a poll out there just to close a little bit ago. Thanks to everybody who weighed in on it. Just 2 games in, how are we feeling about Iowa? I gave out 3 choices. There you go. Optimistic, discouraged, or existence is pain. Because, you got to keep things level-headed. I was pleasantly surprised. More than half of people responding say they're optimistic. Again, I think maybe there's a little more acceptance after we get through that first game glow of, things are going to be different. Look at all the people. Iowa is Iowa. That's what they're going to be. If they get out to a big lead, don't expect them to dogpile on. They're going to not go full shell, but they're not going. They're going to take a few shots. We've seen it, but for the most part, again, going to the final drive of the game, which I think is why Campbell was burning time so much going before that 2013 score. Just, hey, we're just going to run these 3 plays, even on 3rd and 1. You could have gone play action, maybe throw it, pick up the first down. You don't want to risk, though, an incompletion, make Iowa State save that timeout. They're going to do what they're going to do to get through the clock, get out with a win. So I'm glad to see optimism because, again, there's been more explosiveness, a few more. I mean, they've got 4 offensive touchdowns through 2 games. They had 1 last year. They had more safeties than touchdowns through 2 games last year.
One was set up by a blocked punt inside the 20. So
yeah, Logan Lee, awesome play.
And I think a lot of the people that are discouraged, and I would say that I was in the same boat a little bit, just in the mindset coming in. I think that when they got Cade McNamara in the offseason, I think a lot of people, possibly myself even included, thought boy, this guy's going to come in and he's going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every game. He's just going to light things up. And it's not like Kirk or Cade ever said anything to really give us that impression truly, but I think that was just maybe an assumption that some people had. And so that's why maybe there is a little bit of discouragement thinking oh, why isn't this guy just absolutely torching defenses with every single throw?
Cade had 123 yards, and he did miss, and he mentioned it himself, he missed 2 deep throws, one to Seth, one to Deontay Vines, that if they hit on that, that's 2 more touchdowns, and maybe it gets him close to 300, it'd be 250. So it's those things that I don't know if he's still, trying. I know he mentioned he's not 100%, and he hopes to be next week or the next few weeks, but if he can connect on those long balls, that's kind of the Iowa offense, those big chunk plays,
Yeah, everyone was talking about that stat that Fox Sports put up. When Iowa has an 8-point lead since 2015, where they're 63-2, was that it?
I think I missed that.
Oh man, it was all over the papers. And the only games I could think, the first one off the bat, I think the farthest back one was 2018 Penn State. They lost 30-24. I believe they led at some point. What was the score? Let me check the game cast. They were up 12-0 at one point. Remember they had that crazy fake where Sam Brinks caught one from Colton Rastetter, the fake punt in Happy Valley. So they're up 12-0. They blow that lead. And then 2020, Spencer Petras' second career start. They got up 17-0 on Northwestern, the 50 pass game. Of course, after losing that game, they didn't lose for more than a calendar year. So those are the only 2 times since 2015 that Iowa's had an 8-point lead at some point and blown it. So again, that goes back to you get up to the lead they were at, and you don't really need to do a whole lot else except what you've been doing to get those wins. Well, we mentioned, again, the return of the Doughboys, so to speak. We talked about a defensive touchdown. Big play on this day for the defense from Seb Castro, pick 6 that really you can start the cars, it felt like, after that one. All due respect to Iowa State, but again, we know what this team can do with a lead. Again, Rocco Breck made some big throws. Rocco Becht, I should say. We have a friend named Hannah Breck, that's why. I've got the Breck name in there from Benton County. He looked good on 3rd down, made some big throws, but again, when it came down to it, Iowa was able to make that stand. But Seb with the big play, talking about his pick 6. Boy, we saw flashes of him in the Music City Bowl, just like we saw Jazz. And Seb, when he needed to, stepped up in a big way.
It was really slow motion. They had motioned over and just read it the whole way. I saw the quarterback taking steps, and I just went to my progression. And I felt like practice. Everybody slowed down, and something I'll never forget because I saw the ball coming real slow, caught it, take it in, bring it in, and then bring it home.
Yeah, we preach the whole week of practice, score. So if we get a pick against scout teams, we're trying to bring that back to the end zone because every point matters, and we're always trying to just score ourselves to help the entire team. So just the way we practice has led up to that point. So.
You know, for them scoring points is like, you know, I'm just like, I guess it's like normal around here, but I'm just like not used to a defense like scoring points. Like that's like, and for them that's normal, and I think that's awesome. I mean, for them to have our back, you know, like that, it's huge for, you know, when we're not scoring at times. But I think overall the defense, they just continue to play their best, and you know, they're making us better too because in practice we're able to go against one of the best defenses in the nation.
It's been so cool. The first few times that Cade talked to the media, at least from what I could see, just really stoic, not frowning, but just, you know, he has been beaming after these first two. I think this is a kid who is just happy to be back out there playing after a year away. You know, the scare about a month ago at the scrimmage, what he did to his leg. He just looks like he is having a blast. Even if the numbers aren't the sparkling things that some people were hoping for, I mean, he's back on the field playing football, and it's just been super fun to see that, and also super fun to see him realize, the defense can help with the offense too. Yeah, pretty cool.
My back.
Awesome to see. Of course, a huge play in that final drive, and this was kind of pointed out in the broadcast as well, that it was going to have to be an Iowa guy that was going to step up for Iowa to help stop Iowa State from that potentially tying drive. So you had Cooper make a tackle, Joe Evans had a great PBU, and then Ethan Hurkett comes up with the stop of his life.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things, I don't know, again, if this was evident on the broadcast, but that second down play that they ran, I think they picked up 9 yards or so on that second down of that drive. They announced in the stadium, the announcer was like, that's good for another Cyclone first down.
Really?
Yeah, like they thought it was that close that they got a first down on that play. And then he had to say like, oh, correction, it's 3rd and 1. So it was almost like an assumption like, like they're good to go. They got another set of downs here. And then it was almost like I don't know if they got frazzled or something, but then, yeah, Evans comes in with a PBU, and then is it Hurkett?
Ethan Hurkett.
Hurkett comes in with that huge tackle for Alex. He had a couple tackles yesterday, but again,
he was good.
Coming on the scene now.
He, ironically enough, 2 years ago this week, going into the 3rd game of the season, blew out his knee, or had some sort of lower leg injury. I believe it was knee, talking to him earlier this year. Missed the rest of the year. It was his redshirt freshman season. Came back last year, started to get in the rotation a bit, had a couple flashes here and there, and then he really hit his stride yesterday. Kid out of Xavier, again, one of those former Saints on the Hawkeye roster, but just super cool. Again, you know, sometimes these guys put on pads and helmets when we forget they're human beings, and we forget those human stories. Boy, and I talked to Jamari Harris, who will be back for Western Michigan this week too, after sitting out a couple games. Missing a year and being on the sidelines can be a lonely place, and to see these kids come back and start thriving again after having to sit back and rehab, and that's a scary time too. You're wondering if you're ever going to get back to where you were. Just such a cool moment, and etches his name in Cy-Hawk history, and a tackle that wraps up the 200th win for Kirk.
It's so true, and one of the beautiful things about that last drive for Iowa State and those last 2 plays for Iowa is that it comes from, I don't want to say totally unexpected sources, but you know, it wasn't Cooper DeJean out there making the game-winning tackle. It's like you got Joe Evans, who had, I mean, that was obviously such a huge game for him, and you know, coming back to his hometown and playing in a stadium that he grew up right close to. I mean, he had a decent game yesterday, 5 tackles, I think.
He was everywhere, though. I feel like he had some big pressures that, you know, don't show up in the stat sheet, but he was playing like this was his last Cy-Hawk game in his hometown.
But he gets that just pass break up there right at the line of scrimmage, and then I mean, who would have guessed that Ethan Hurkett is the one who makes the game-winning tackle? I mean, all respect to Dwayne Schulte's boys there on the defense, but I would not have expected Hurkett to be the kid who comes in there and makes the game-winning tackle for
Between
loss.
Ethan making a tackle like that and Quinn Schulte inexplicably getting, you didn't see this on the broadcast.
Oh, that's right.
Quinn had close-ups from the ground cam for like 11 to 12 seconds sustained. For no explained reason.
I think he made a tackle afterwards, but they had him on for like 10 seconds
saying
And-
anything about him, or
Well,
no?
I think they mentioned his name, didn't they?
Just like this shot.
Yeah, it was like
just
a
the
really
headshot.
close-up.
Just
Just why not?
the Midwest getting lost in Quinn Schulte's eyes. But again, Ethan Herkett's tackle wraps up the 200th career win for Kirk Ferentz as a head coach, 12 during his first stint as a head coach at Maine, and then the other 188, I believe I'm doing that math right, at Iowa. What a ride it's been as a Hawkeye here in his 25th season. So Kirk, on what 200 means to him.
The 200th part, I don't keep track of that, I can assure you, but somebody said something a week ago about, coming up the tunnel, it's 199, and then the media people will visit with them during the, getting ready for the broadcast midweek, same thing. So, in a long story short, just, really feel very honored and very appreciative. I'm fortunate and, whether it's football, life, it really doesn't matter to do something that's, has some significance. Nobody gets there alone, and certainly in football, that's the way it works. So I just think about it, 40-some years ago, I landed in Iowa, not even know where I was, quite frankly, or what I was about to walk into. And the commonality over all this time has just been around good people. We've had good leadership on campus, worked with great coaches and great support staff members, and most importantly, players. And players win games. That's never going to change. You got to have the right guys. We got a bunch of guys in that locker room. I'm really, thrilled to be with these guys today to have that happen. And a guy like Dallas Clark in there, guess he got kicked off the sideline. I can understand why. But anyway, have him in there too. It's just, past and present. So pretty neat, and it'll be a good ride home. I mean, it's not something nobody gets into. At least I don't think they get into coaching for that reason. You get into it because of the people, and it's one of those things. Again, I never certainly got into it for that reason. Wanted to win enough so I can keep my job. I figured that out, believe me. But it's more about the experiences and the people you get to work with, and whether it was that group right there or even going back to '99, just a lot of good people. A lot of good people have come through this program, and it's a thing I don't think was any different in the '80s either. So I've always felt really fortunate to have a chance to work with high-quality folks.
I think he was answering your question there. What was your inquiry to him for that answer?
I just said to him, because before Kirk came into the press conference, all the players had come in through there. We talked to 5 or 6 guys, and it seems like each of them said something about, like, boy, he was really emotional in the locker room. I came around the corner, and you could see the tears in his eyes, that kind of thing. And so I think I just asked him, like, your players talked about the emotion that you had coming in. What is it about this moment or this game that made you feel maybe more emotional than other ones? And so that was his response there.
We've seen, well documented now that there's a video crew all over the place for Iowa, but the emotions have become more apparent and more frequent, at least as far as we can tell on the outside over the last few years. And I think to his point, you don't get into coaching and be like, I'm going to win 200 games. I mean, you're chasing certainly, hopefully, success, whether that's titles or championships, whatever it may be. But I think he's always said he would just be a teacher, if not just be a teacher, not to slight anything, but like he wouldn't have a high profile job if it weren't for this going it the way it did. And I think a lot of coaches, I know, covering other coaches in the past, they'd be like, I'd be teaching somewhere, and I would be working with young people, trying to make the future better through what I can give to them. And I think, I'm sure he's getting overwhelmed thinking about what does 200 wins mean, and not just in terms of success, but sustainability and staying in one place for so long, and the thousands of lives that you get to impact through that, whether it's through the successes or through the really rough times too. I mean, that's a journey.
Yeah, and I understand his desire to downplay the 200th win, just because at the end of the day, it's a benchmark with a nice round number, but it doesn't really mean anything more than win number 199 or anything else. I mean, when you get to wins that are like he passes Hayden Fry on the wins list, or somebody else on the Big Ten coaching wins list, something like that, that is a little bit more like significant, or really does mean something. This is just a round number that we've decided means something significant. But I think he does get emotional. I don't know. I'd be curious to see him after every game if he has the same kind of emotions out there. I think it was maybe Mike and I, when we were driving to Nashville for the bowl game in December, that we were saying, like, it could be just biology in him, because as men get older, they do get more emotional as their testosterone dips as we get into the science portion of the Eye on the Hawks podcast. As testosterone goes down, they become more emotional. I've seen that with family members of mine and with other colleagues and stuff, that you just cry easier and things like that. And so I think that's a little bit of what's going on with Kirk as well. Just because I think a lot of people read into it, oh, he's reaching the end of his career or something like that. And I think it's more so just something that comes with age. You just become naturally, biologically more emotional, and just he's become maybe more reflective as well.
Yeah.
Just looking back, he's been at Iowa for 25 years. He sees some of the differences that he's made and looks back at some of the differences he's maybe made over the years.
I think, the more you see, the more you are able to reflect. You have more to reflect on. And I think, we're not as old as Kirk, but I've noticed I've got in my mid to late 30s, I'm prone to a few more tears. I'm an uncle now, so you get to watch nieces and nephews grow up, and you just, everything, you get a little bit clumped there a little bit. And I know I don't know if you're the same, Mike, but I know you've got nieces and nephews, and you see more. We've seen more of the world, even in our own little bubbles. And I know, going back to the teaching parallel, because that's what coaching is teaching. It's just headsets and more yelling than normal teaching. My mom was a preschool teacher for 25 years, and she still sees kids around. Mitch Keller was one of her students at Noah's Our Preschool. Wow. And so she, when she gets reflective about how many hundreds of kids, at 3 and 4 years old go through, you get emotional about the journey, because you hear this from so many coaches talk about they are more proud of seeing their student athletes succeed. And I'm sure the same goes to teacher, seeing your students succeed than anything you could have achieved in your academic career, your athletic career. Seeing what grows beyond is always the most fruitful thing.
A comparison or parallel I like to tell is from my time when I was a reporter in Sioux City. Try to make it as short as I can. We were down in Florida for the national championship game as Morningside was playing in the NAIA title game. One of their players got named the National Player of the Year. Trent Solzma, for the Sioux City fans out there, was named National Player of the Year. And one of my colleagues, who was in his late 50s, early 60s, went over to Trent's parents and gave him a hug afterwards, and he was like bawling afterwards. Yeah. And so afterwards, I knew him well enough that I went up to him after the fact and was like, "Boy, you were really emotional there for a while." And he was like, "It's going to happen to you too, Owen. One day, just trust me." He said that same thing where he's like, "Just I find myself as I've gotten older, just I'll start crying at the drop of a hat." It was mainly because Trent, when he was in high school, he'd been very especially kind to this colleague's daughter, who didn't have a lot of friends, and so Trent was a really nice guy to her. So that was a little bit part of it, but he's also just like, I'm just an old man and I'm emotional now.
That's also the Solzma family. I went to school with his brother Alex, and those are fantastic folks, the Solzma family.
I'm curious to ask, because another question I asked to Kirk was about, do you remember your first win, the first one that you had?
You had a great answer, too, yeah.
I know. I'm a little bummed because I meant it as his first win at Maine, going back to whenever that was. 1990, was that?
Something like that, yeah. Late 80s.
And so he answered it as his first Iowa win, which, whatever. I had to check that after the fact, oh no, that was the Iowa win. I'm curious if you guys remember, because we're all a similar age. Do you remember Kirk's first win when they beat Illinois? Or
I don't either. I started watching the 2001 season. When I was, that age, I was more of an NFL fan when I was 8, or when he first started coaching, 8 or 9. And I remember watching it with my dad. The Texas Tech Alamo Bowl was one of the first games. I remember watching an upset win over either Northwestern or Michigan State in 2000 when they won 3 games, I think, whatever game, and then the players jumping in a big pile. But no, I don't remember the Northern Illinois game.
That was kind of my next question, was just your first memory of Coach Ferentz, if there's anything that stands out. Just again, as I said, I'm kind of a kid who grew up with out-of-state parents, and so wasn't raised a Hawkeye fan or anything. So Kirk's name didn't mean a whole lot to me until I kind of started following in the 02 season.
Sure.
But I don't know, for you guys who grew up around the Hawkeyes a little bit more.
Probably 02. So you guys know this. I don't know if viewers do. I was raised a Minnesota fan. My dad's from Northeast Iowa, had family in the Twin Cities. So it was Maroon. When people talk about the teams in Iowa in the early 2000s, I'm like, yeah, but Marion Barber and Lawrence Maroney. Do you guys remember that? Thomas Taipei was an incredible fullback. Asad Abdul Khalik that team just ran the ball down people's throats, talking about Greg Esslinger and Mark Setterstrom on the O-line. So I knew way more about Gopher football than I did Hawkeye. But I do remember being at the Metrodome in 02 for the win that, you had people holding their roses in their teeth because people thought they were going to go to the Rose Bowl, they go to the Orange Bowl. But I do remember that and just being even as I was 15, 16 in 02, 16 years old, I guess, and just being that team's good, and whatever they're doing seems to be pretty great. And obviously I knew the names, reading the papers and things like that, but that was my first real full exposure that I can remember really well of just what was being built in Iowa City and what was happening there.
And I suppose for fans that are watching live or are sounding off in the comments, as it were, I mean, feel free to drop a early memory of your experience. I'm curious to hear about that from the 99-2000 seasons when Iowa had a few more struggles. As Kirk said, there was a little bit more time passing between between win number 1 and win number 2. But
for sure,
I think we had some sound from the players as well that we were going to hear after the game.
Yeah, certainly, and a few Iowa-born players in here just reflecting on what it means to be part of that 200th win for Coach Ferentz.
It's awesome, you know, when you come in the locker room and you see tears in his eyes. He's a guy that gives his all to us. I'd do anything for him. You know, I love him to death. So do a lot of these other guys.
Oh, it's great. It's great. My coach is a great person. I mean, I love to see him happy, but when he cried, kind of make me get emotional. I mean, but he's a great coach, so he deserved it.
I didn't even know this was going to be Kirk's 200th win until I got into the locker room. And then just to see the look on his face, knowing that we all contributed to just do that for him and for this team. And because we're all in this together.
I mean, we all love that guy. He's a great coach, but he's an even better person off the field. You know, he's always checking in on us and stuff. You know, there's no one that deserves it more than him.
Oh, it's huge. It's so much fun celebrating with him. He's getting a little emotional. So many guys that new guys coming in, they love the energy too. So just great team win, great opportunity to be able to celebrate that with Coach.
Yeah, I mean, this was just an unbelievable team win, and I think, you know, the guys were so excited just to get to the locker room and celebrate with Coach. I mean, to be a part of a team with the greatest coach, I mean, he cares about us so much, and for us to be on the field and be a part of this team with the 200th win, I mean, I'm just truly honored to be a part of this team.
Was Kate about to call him the GOAT? I thought he was about to say something like that. The
Pretty
greatest.
quick. I mean, ...
It's
200 kind of speaks for itself. And again, Kirk will deflect to players, but boy, any coach who's won that long, and you go look down the list of coaches that have won 200 games, and you know all of them, and you define them by success and longevity, certainly. And
I think
just a moment.
They talked about it on College Football Final last night, but is there, 6 active coaches who have 200 wins?
Sounds right, something like that. It's quite the achievement. But speaking of achievements, bringing back the Cy-Hawk Trophy to Iowa City after it spent a year in Ames, it was that thievery through the eyes of the Hawkeyes that the Cyclones perpetrated against them last year that apparently stuck in their minds, stuck in their craw a little bit. You brought this back from the postgame, Owen. A few players remembered where they were and what they saw a year ago.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to jump in that sound or you want to hear my. Yeah, let's listen
You
to
just
the
wanna-
players first, and then I'll weigh in after that.
I mean, last year after the game when they won, you know, there was a bunch of guys running over. You know how we swarm off after the game. A bunch of guys running over into our swarm and saying stuff to us, but you know, we want to do it as a team. Go get that trophy as a team. So we're happy to have it back.
I mean, it felt good, getting it back, because last year it didn't feel too good, losing it, and then the whole team coming on our sideline in our face. I held that grudge for a whole year.
We know how it felt last year. They didn't quite swarm to the trophy, so we're always going to show that we are one team, one unit, and we're going to do it together. So.
The main reason I think this even got brought up was because what you see right there, that they, after the game, walked over hand in hand to the trophy and wanted to swarm to the trophy. And it was after that it kind of got brought up, those guys, they felt like disrespected us. I totally had forgotten that last year after the game there was some extracurriculars going on, a little bit closer to Iowa's tunnel. There were some shoving matches, people getting pushed around. No,
I didn't even remember that, to be honest. I went to the game last year as a fan, and someone tweeted it before the game, some Iowa media member, and you saw the Cyclone fans going by the Iowa tunnel, or not fans, Cyclone players going and just chirping and stuff, which you can do when you win, right? You can chirp. It's part of the game, a little trash talk. But I don't think they took it, they all seem to remember it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember that Jet Beecham at the time actually got some video of that. I was like, what the heck is even happening here? Like, you just saw a lot of pushing and yelling and shoving and stuff, and I don't think there were any like consequences that came out of it, like anybody suspended or anything like that. But there was definitely a lot of stuff going on after that game last year.
It certainly feels like something that happens in the moment. Cooler heads prevail. You move on, and then when you get back into that week, that's the stuff that you pull back to the forefront. And not that there was talk of you don't need bulletin board material this week. You don't need little extra
Doesn't hurt.
influence. Never hurt. But we do turn the page now. Actually, before we turn the page, we have to look back real quickly because morale is so much better for me this week. After
Before we get to
week
that,
2 of picks,
Mitch's the parade. I did want to bring up this cool thing, just a tweet. The kid captain was an Ames. Usually
Al Crone, yeah.
there's a kid captain every game, but usually I'm pretty sure, and this maybe just because it's in Iowa, they don't actually go to the game. They're just, honored before the season and whatnot. But he was there. His name's Niall, and Torrey Taylor and Logan Lee grabbed him from the stands, and he got to go back to the locker room, I believe.
Super. Chelsea Brown from KCRG had an awesome video of it. And not to have the cliche line, but that's what it's all about, is making memories and doing cool stuff. And what more can you ask for?
Look, I just wanted to bring that up because it was a cool moment. And awesome. Anytime there's a kid named Niall who's a Hawkeye fan, you got to give him a shout out.
Again, there's a kid named Hayden on this team. There's a kid named Niall as a kid captain. Yeah, it's awesome. Now let's talk about me. Unless we want to know what you got.
Sorry, there was one more thing before we start to look back and stuff. Going back to the swarm video there, that first guy that comes out of the swarm and goes and gets the trophy is Joe Evans. I mean, I just thought that was such a great moment too.
Again, the numbers weren't crazy for him. He certainly had more impactful stat sheet games, but a dude from Ames who has walked the life he did. Again, a record-setting quarterback at Ames High School. To come to Iowa, his dad's alma mater, walk on, earn a Scully, be named a captain, and win an Ames for his final side. Yeah, that's just...
It's kind of cool, too, because when you watch the video, we're watching it, if streaming it live on YouTube at Iowa's News Now, our account. When you watch it, it seems like once Joe starts going, the rest of the team kind of lets him go.
Yeah, it's a really super
It seemed
cool.
very evident that he was the guy that was going to go get it. And he's a captain, so obviously he's going to be at the front of the line before the game. But yeah, it was Cade and Joe were there arm in arm, the guys that were at the front of the line leading them out onto the field. And then even after the game, I think Joe was about the last guy from the Hawkeyes to leave the field. He really was soaking that one in.
Soaking in, for sure. And again, not the biggest numbers, but I think Joe Evans might be your game day MVP if you want to pick things like that, because that was awesome.
Now there's someone soaking it in right now. After going 0-6, I'll just bring up on our live YouTube stream.
It's a marathon, folks. It's a marathon.
Mitch goes 7-0 in the Eye on the Hawks pick'em.
6-1 is pretty darn good,
Owen
too.
went 6-1. He picked. I'll just run down. Mitch got Kansas -3, Colorado -3 over Nebraska, Purdue +3 over Virginia Tech, Northwestern +1.5 over UTEP, Wazoo over Wisconsin +6.5, and Eastern Michigan. This is the good one, +20. They won Minnesota won by 19, right?
Oh, wow.
And again, they were
Iowa -4.
I think inside the 10 or the 5 with like a minute and a half to go, and didn't score to go up. So again, that's real close. Northwestern again finally looked good against.
I'm officially off the Illinois bandwagon, by the way.
Boy, Illinois, they've had a tough opener. I mean, Toledo's probably your favorite to win the MAC. Kansas is going to be really good, but yeah, that's a tough road for Illinois so far this year.
I was super pleased seeing those come in, at least just knowing what my picks have been. I mean, again, it reflects on I don't know what the heck people were thinking setting that Colorado line at 3. It's like, and then
that Nebraska defense looked good for a while.
Yeah, it was close in the first half. It was, and then Jeff Sims just turns the ball over twice, and Colorado benefits hugely off that. But it was 0-0 at the end of one, and I hammered the under before, not to toot my own betting horn, but yeah, that cleared because it was like 60 points.
We talked about this. We talked about this too. We saw it in Columbus last year with Iowa and Ohio State. A defense can only hold off explosiveness for so long, especially if there are turnovers and the offense is not doing something. I mean, Nebraska hung tight, and then it was just the floodgates open, and Colorado scored a lot in the later parts of the game that really spread out that final score. But that's a good Nebraska defense there.
Quick poll for you two.
Sure.
Right now, would you say Shedeur Sanders is Heisman front runner?
I think you'd have to.
Yeah.
Texas big win over Alabama. Maybe Quinn
Quinn
Ewers is up there.
He is special.
Caleb Williams has again had incredible numbers through 2 weeks for USC.
Yeah.
I mean, That was a late
true.
night game.
I think the
Pac-12 after dark.
I think
but-
just the media coverage of Colorado, and again they've got USC in I think 3 weeks.
I mean, I think almost Travis Hunter.
Hunter was
he
great.
plays both ways. I saw a stat somewhere that he already has more interceptions and offensive yards than Jabril Peppers did, and he was a Heisman finalist.
Yeah.
In an entire season, through two games.
You might
Travis Hunter
see
almost
a
had
little cannibalism between all the,
Oh, yeah.
the great talent on Colorado. And again, a dark horse maybe a little bit in the race. The reason why I think I at least convinced you, it sounded like Mike was already leaning that way, but Washington State, Cameron Ward, that kid is all sorts of special up there in Pullman. Really, really fun to see him thrive. And Wazoo looking for a home next year. Boy, what conference wouldn't want a cool moment like that in a program like that?
They said that on College Football Final again last night, which, by the way, is like, for a long time has been maybe my favorite ESPN show in terms of like specialty sports shows. College Football Final is always so much fun. Great watch at 1 a.m. on a Saturday night.
It's really good if you go to the game and you don't get to watch. Like if you go to the Iowa game as a fan, you just go home and watch that, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I'm caught up to speed.
Caught up there.
But they were saying that like both Oregon State and Washington State, they think are really going to play with a ton of fire this year, just because they know like we're the stragglers that are getting left behind in the Pac-12, and they really want to show something this year.
A contract year, so to speak.
That's true.
For two programs. We do look ahead to week 3. Iowa will be hosting Western Michigan at Kinnick, 2:30 kickoff on Saturday. A very different Western Michigan team than came in 10 years ago. That was the 3rd game ever for PJ Fleck in Kalamazoo, and one that they've probably pushed out of their memory. I believe the final score was 55 or 56-3. BJ Lowry had 2 pick sixes. Cavante Martin-Manley had 2 punt returns for touchdowns, and that was kind of a swing game for Western. They ended up switching Tyler Van Tuver. I covered this Broncos team. That's why
He
I know.
knows.
That was a bit of a turning point where Zach Terrell started becoming the starter for the Broncos, and things shifted a bit. Very different team, though. Not a lot of leftovers there. We do know Iowa is going in now. The coaches poll just dropped as we launched the pod. They're 24th in the country, whether that means anything or not. And the AP poll, maybe they're ranked again. But this is a Western
It comes
Michigan
out Monday, right? The AP
on
poll?
Monday, yeah, Monday at 11 or noon, whatever it is. Western Michigan coming off a 48-7 loss at Syracuse. Western Michigan scored on the second play of the game, 75-yard touchdown run, and still trailed 45-7 at half. So if you're looking to play catch up on any sort of contractual point levels, we'll see. Iowa's going to be what Iowa is, but we will see what happens there. Thank you for updating the graphic, Mike. Again, they're taking shots and they're doing what they can. We'll just let things play out the way it is. An update also on Utah State after their loss at Kinnick to start the year last year. They go and beat, who was it?
Idaho State.
Idaho State 78-28 yesterday, 44 points in the second quarter. So maybe this is again, Utah State with 60 new players and all that. Like, we'll keep an eye on the Aggies and see.
44 points in the second quarter?
Which is what Iowa has scored in 2 games. I didn't realize that until I shared that. I wasn't trying to slight anything. That's just a lot of points to score in 15 minutes.
That's an 8-man caliber.
Yeah.
Point output for 1 quarter. That's incredible.
The Aggies move on to Don Bosco in week 3. But it'll be super fun. We'll get way more into breaking down the final non-con game of the season for Iowa, obviously coming up on Wednesday after we've talked to players and coaches going into the Bronco week back at Kinnick Stadium. Final thoughts as we wrap up on Cyhawk 2-0 and what we've seen from Iowa through 8 quarters of football.
One thing that I would say is if there's, again, I mean, we got to be happy with 2-0 for a Hawkeye fan. I mean, for those of us who would travel with them to a bowl game, you got to be happy with wins because that means a better bowl game that we get to travel to. So let's keep those wins coming. The one thing that I would say is, at least like in the back of my mind, kind of a concern, and maybe is for a lot of fans out there, is just like first 2 drives are great. You know, they get some points out of the first 2 drives. First quarter itself is great for the Hawkeyes, but after that it flattens out a little bit. Is this team, if they need to play a big second half, are they capable of doing that? If this team falls behind, if they don't score in the first quarter and they fall behind 7-0, 14-0 at halftime, do they have the horses to make a big push and make something happen in the second half? I mean, that's something we can't answer probably for a while. Probably not going to happen at Western Michigan, but something that we're going to have to figure out over the coming weeks, potentially at Penn State.
Yeah, to that point, scoring so early and a couple times, what happens when Iowa goes down in the first quarter. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Similar to what you just said. Kay talks about facing adversity and how he's happy that they're doing it. Well, they haven't trailed at all this year. So what happens when that first time, because it's going to happen, obviously, unless they go undefeated and win every game, which probably not going to happen, but can the offense move the ball and score when they're down? That will be one thing that I'm, interested to see probably in a couple weeks at Penn State, maybe.
Sorry, finish.
No, yeah, that's basically it. I'm done.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I do think that they do have that capacity. I did not have that faith so much the last couple of years, but I think that they've shown the ability to move the ball and to spread things out and take more risks offensively with Cade at quarterback. That I do have faith that that could happen, or there is a chance that could be done effectively this year if that time comes, and that is a necessity.
Yeah. And I think if one of those plays, whether it's the long one to Seth or the one to Nico that gets picked that might be a little underthrown, or the go to Deontay, if one of those hits, there's a little different feeling. I think it's again, the big plays off the top, whether it's Jazz with the big run or the big third and short pass to Luke. When you get those bigger plays, if you get a few more of those, I think or even just one more, again, I think if that 91-yarder hits and it's a 27-point game for Iowa, and you got that one big pass play there again, and now you've got back-to-back weeks with Seth having 2 long touchdown plays, I think maybe the feeling feels a little better. I think if you connect on just 1 or 2 more of those big explosive plays, particularly in the pass game, there's a little better feeling. So maybe there's an opportunity going up against Western Michigan. We don't know anything about spreads or anything like that. We'll certainly make our Big Ten West picks yet again on Wednesday when we have that preview come out. We'll record in the afternoon and get that to you hopefully as quickly as that evening. But we'll talk to Kirk and company on Tuesday, get you everything else. Again, thanks to everybody who tuned into the YouTube live stream, everybody who was in the chat, mostly HairTrigger83, who says he moved to Iowa from the United Kingdom in 1994, really got into Iowa football in 2002. So thanks to him taking up the lion's share of the chat. But everybody get in there, share everything as we go on these live streams on Sunday. But thanks to everybody who watched and has tuned in and all the support throughout the first month or so of this podcast. It's been really fun to do, and we're almost getting to that conference season where the chips are really on the table. So thanks again for everybody's support and for tuning in. For Mike and Owen, I am Mitch. We will see you Wednesday on Eye on the Hawks.